Okay then. So, where the hell are we?
We are at the Royal Institute of Technology, Kungliga Tekniska Högskolan, KTH for short. It is
Wasn't it the
theoretically.
What is it? Wasn't it the Kacklinga?
We're getting to that. It is theoretically a technical university, and I say theoretically. Well, you'll see why in a little moment. You see, when you think about academia in Sweden, the first word that will probably come to mind is cancer, which is a bit unfair because cancer is more easily curable. And the fact of the matter is that, curiously enough, it's actually this university that is far more cancerous than my home university. My home university is one stop further that way. It is the Stockholm University. It looks like a Soviet mental asylum, and it is.
We've been there, haven't we?
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
It is, because that's where the gender studies faculty is located.
No.
They don't have a gender studies faculty here, but they do have gender studies professors employed at the theoretically, hypothetically, technological university.
And they also have that vice rector, vice chair.
Yes, the vice chair of equality,
Yeah.
vice rektor för jämställdhet. Which sounds like satire. It sounds like the kind of thing that you'd read about maybe on a country ball page, Captain Sweden to the rescue. But it's actually true. It is actually true. This place does have gender studies professors employed. Why is this important? Well, we'll be getting to that. This isn't really news, it's more like old news, because it's about a year ago. Two left-wing feminist female students from this university wrote an op-ed in the engineering journal Ny Teknik, where they fundamentally asked for more feminist nuances in their education.
Sorry, more feminine.
Feminine, yes.
Yeah.
And quote, this means that technology also is everything from knitting to sport and cooking. And despite this, technology is unconsciously divided into masculine and feminine attributes. Masculine attributes are associated with function and are often valued more highly than the feminine attributes, which are connected to design and art. That's why the view of what is high-tech will have masculine tones and will oftentimes be associated with masculine duties and gadgets.
The links will be in the low bar, because this ain't satire.
No, it's true. As female students of engineering at KTH here, we think that it is inexplicable and impossible to understand that it was only in the fourth year of our education that we were given a presentation around gender studies connected to technology and design in our education. For 3 years, the subject hadn't even been mentioned or discussed. Yeah, I wonder why.
Well, even further than that, I'm wondering why was it mentioned in the fourth year to begin with? I mean, it should not have been mentioned at all. I mean, is concrete masculine?
Well, it depends on the shape,
If you build a big fat feminist with it, then it's not masculine.
Yeah. Yeah. We have realized that this erroneous perception of technology is deeply rooted at KTH. The majority of assignments are about designing parts of vehicles like engines and cylinders and brakes, and all these components have an apparent connection to functions with explicitly masculine attributes. Can you understand what they're trying to say here?
I think I hear some helicopters idling in the background, heading towards this direction. Other than that, I think I do understand, and that's, believe it or not, in the sense that they basically think that doing stuff, I mean, they are the biggest gender conservatives in a way, because
They're saying that knitting is feminine.
yeah, they're basically saying that knitting is feminine, and basically saying that doing stuff, building stuff like these buildings that we're admiring here, is inherently masculine. And you know, I'm as far right as it can possibly be, and even I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what they're saying. Now, of course, they try to dress it in progressive language, but at the end of the day, that is the fundamental assumption behind that. I wouldn't call it rationale because it isn't. Behind that rant, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, so what happened?
Well, let's go on a bit more. The other students had not reflected upon this, which indicates that the subject of gender and technology hasn't been brought up sufficiently in our education. Well, it also indicates that the other students are mature and that they realize this is a technological university, at least it's supposed to be, and that, yeah, implementing and injecting some Marxist bullshit into it isn't really going to help. And I mean, okay, let's forget my disdain for gender studies. I think that it's retarded. I think that it's one of those courses you take and you end up being stupider at the end of it than at the beginning. How does this benefit your engineering diploma? Let's say it's 5 years into the future, you have an engineer from KTH, at that point, as it will no doubt be named Kungliga Tekniska Högskolan, and you essentially have an engineer from any other technological university that hasn't been infected by this virulent cancer.
Let's say the Technical University of Seoul.
Yes, and the employer is going to look at that and they're going to say, should I get the engineer who has studied how to identify cracks in armored concrete, or should I hire the engineer who has been taught how to identify cracks in the glass ceiling? I think that the choice will be obvious.
Quite obvious, yeah, especially if you have a big building project and you really need the job done fast.
I mean, really, which are you going to hire? Do you want to have something good, or do you want to have the regalskeppet Vasa? Do you want your engineering project to sink after 300 meters of travel? Because if you do, hire an engineer who has had his education poisoned by gender studies. Otherwise, it might be a good idea to go for the patriarchal, heteronormative, cisgendered pigs that actually did get an engineering education.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the Dome of Vision. That one, basically.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that one. They built it and everyone thought it was kind of interesting, and you know, kind of like how anything that's fundamentally crazy is interesting. But I think it's very illustrative. You know, they built that there. This is like a reasonably old, and you know, it's not very beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's reasonably beautiful of the campus. And they built this weird modernist thing there because why not?
It just seems to me, and this is a pattern that I've been noticing since I've arrived here, that in many places things were going well, and then some modernist leftist degenerate came in and tried to fuck things up. They fucked things up in Rinkeby by bringing in all of that diversity. They fucked things up in downtown, in the city center, by building that huge Casa Populi tier type of crap. They fuck up this campus because look at it. It's just a very nice place. I mean, sure, as you say, it's not incredibly beautiful, but still, I mean, it just is nice. And then, boom, comes that huge ball right there.
That's actually very patriarchal, isn't it? It's a ball.
It's a half of a ball, so therefore it's a cotton. It's a cut ball. So
So it's castrated. It's fine.
It's fine.
Symbol.
Yeah, it's cocked enough.
All men are pigs.
It's
All men are semi-castrated.
yeah, so it's cocked enough.
But I mean, I think that's illustrative, because we were talking about this absolute insanity, and there was actually a conservative female student at KTH who wrote a very intelligent and well thought out reply, essentially very politely and diplomatically calling them idiots. Guess what happens?
Let me guess. The professors agreed with the leftists?
Yes. Gustav Amberg, Vice Rector for Equality at KTH. Yes, that is not. It's not from an ironical, satirical comic strip mocking Sweden. This is actually real. So there is a position called a Vice Rector for Equality, Vice Rector för jämställdhet. Anna Wahl, a professor of Gender Studies, Organization and Management at KTH. I don't know how we combine those. It sounds like there's this. There's a saying, combining ice cream with dog shit improves neither flavor. So combining gender studies with anything fucks up everything else that you combine it with. And Peter Gudmundsson, the rector of KTH, wrote an article saying, "We accept your challenge of educating our engineers in gender studies." And then they said, "Oh, we were very overjoyed to read the debate article by the students Adelina Eriksson and Hanna Tenor Årström, the leftists." And it's like, "We agree about their problem description and agree that it is an important question for everyone educating people in technology to problematize the image of technology and to be conscious of the fact that different areas of technology have different gender markings and are treated differently." And it's like we in the work KTH does right now, we want to develop facets in the education so that KTH will produce engineers that will work equally and will be able to identify cracks in equality in their own environment. I'm sorry, I want engineers to identify cracks in concrete, not in the glass ceiling. Come on.
How do engineers and in general, anyone in technical fields, they're not supposed to work equally, they're supposed to work efficiently.
Now you're being patriarchal.
Sorry about that.
Check your Slovakia.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, and it's like there are good examples of gender studies being introduced in the architectural program, the civil engineer program, and there are freestanding courses in gender studies and equality.
Why would you have gender studies in the architectural program? I mean, what, build buildings to be more feminine? I mean, what, put tits on the new buildings? I mean, I'm sorry, I can't take this seriously.
I mean, this is the problem, because in 5 years, a degree from here will be treated with disdain. It's like KTH, the so-called technical university where they introduce gender studies. They introduce gender studies and for engineers to identify cracks in equality. I want them to identify cracks in load-bearing steel columns. I don't want them to identify cracks in equality. Let the hack frauds of the genusvetenskapliga over at Stockholm University do that.
Yeah.
Let them get some overpaid sinecure in some government agency somewhere where they get paid to complain or something.
Well, in fairness, I mean, this subsidization of bullshit, essentially.
Yeah.
This has created more of them. I mean, considering that how well one can get paid in a governmental agency, as you said, paid to complain, it is no wonder that many of them saw an opportunity in establishing a career within that. But since this has been going on for decades already in Sweden, now there's just too many of them. So those that aren't successful and successful in the sense of landing some government bollocks job, now they go to, I guess, feminist initiative.
Yeah, precisely.
But still, you told me while we were still at the Java that even though most of the Swedish society looks like the Berkeley campus,
Yeah.
except for the base stickman and all of the physical violence,
Yeah.
that's only for diversity.
Yeah.
Even so, the campuses are still marginally, I guess, more mature than what we'd expect in the
I've
Anglosphere.
never heard anybody demand a safe space at Stockholm University. Never. And I've never heard any suggestion of that being done here either. And you have to remember that KTH is farther down the gender bend than Stockholm University. I mean, you know, and people don't say it out loud, particularly in the social sciences university, because they're terrified of, you know, oh, well, maybe I say something and then some feminist is going to get triggered, she's going to write to my future employer and say,
Yeah.
you know, he said something mean on the internet, or something like that. But not a lot of people agree with that bullshit. I mean, when we had a lecture with, Jonas Ebbesson, you know, you've covered him in one of your videos, the dean of the Faculty of Law at Stockholm University, who took down old oil paintings, oil portraits of former professors because there were too many white men among them. I mean, we had a discussion with that about him in the auditorium, actually, because we were far in the back and we were talking quietly while he had this presentation. And like all the boys I talked to, and probably half of the girls, said very unflattering things about him. They said this, well, they basically did say that. I mean, they said, oh, you know, the fucking hell, what kind of a fucking censored expletive is he anyway? And obviously these are people who wouldn't say it out loud, you know, but the prevailing sentiment is, oh my god, this fucking guy.
Yeah, but I don't know if this will change anytime soon, but it seems to be a recurring theme in this country, that too many individuals who obviously see the things as they are, and they see it like I see them, which is to say this is degeneracy, this is insanity.
Yeah.
They just don't say it out loud, ever.
Yeah, you have to remember that there was a time when some Swedish thinker or something called Norway the last Soviet state.
Yeah.
And it's actually the other way around. Sweden is not a democracy. And it hasn't been a democracy for a very long time. It's not a centrally run dictatorship. It's not the government that's going to knock down your door if you say something wrong. That might come, give it some time, but the big problem is, and this is something that one of our most notable authors, Wilhelm Moberg, said in the 1960s, that Sweden has a democratorship.
Yeah.
The corridor of opinions isn't enforced by the state, it's enforced by a conglomerate, if you will, of politicians and journalists and their useful idiots. And it's such a strong consensus culture that if you say something wrong, particularly if you work in a full-blown commie field of trade, let's say that you're a professor or you're a, well, I think that the professor is actually, that's the best example there is. Look at Anneli Sjöberg, look at Jan Gunnarsson. I know of, I'm not going to mention any names obviously, but I know of people who are aspiring to go the teacher university program, you know, the lärarhögskolan, or at least convert their courses into that. Fucking hell, some of those people are dumb as bricks, but they will still get a job because they vote for the Green Party, they vote for Fi, they proudly say they're feminist, and actually intelligent academics,
they have the correct opinions.
Yeah, actually intelligent academics with the wrong opinions aren't getting jobs, and we're going to get people who are thoroughly incompetent in some cases, but they have the right opinion, and by right we mean the left.
Yeah.
No confusion there. We don't want to say that, you know, this isn't the conservative heaven, obviously.
And it hasn't been for at the very least 80 years.
Yeah.
I mean, gone are the days of the 30s or late 20s when you would have the moderates having on their election posters that whoever votes for the Social Democrats are working for Russia, for the Soviet Union.
Ja, envar som röstade för Arbetarepartiet röstar för Moskva.
Ja, så Socialdemokraterna har called den Arbetarpartiet, the Workers' Party.
Yeah.
In fairness, that was the name of all communist parties in Europe at that time. But yeah, still.
I mean, it's incredible because
This is what I asked the Sverige Demokraterna lady, I asked Anneli about that, I asked Mian. I'm asking you, do you have any hope? Because it just seems to me that it is this vicious circle of everyone knows that something is wrong, but there is no way of establishing the public square effect, which is everyone knows that 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 there is a problem. You don't get this. There's just no way to establish that because you always have either the media, the cathedral media, or the academics, or the whatnot.
the great issue is simply whether or not, because it is a snowball effect, or if we're going to go with a leftist vocabulary and go anthropogenic global warming, there is a hockey stick. And in this case, there is manifestly a hockey stick. There's a demographic hockey stick, which will pose a threat to the Swedish culture and society as we know it. Because, I mean, it's not an immigrant versus Swedish issue. I mean, just now, even Socialistvänsterns television admitted that, SD, they're the third largest party among immigrants. So like 15% of immigrant men, 11% of immigrant women vote for SD.
Yeah.
And so it's a cultural question. It's a question of whether or not we want a secular Occidental Sweden or whether we want some sort of, I'm thinking South Africa, gated wealthy communities on the one hand and total slums on the other.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, just right now with how the särskilt utsatta områden have increased in number from 15 to 23 in just 2 years. The last report was in 2015. So, is there any hope? There is. We're not as bad as, let's say, France. We're marginally better than France. France started earlier and has, I think at least, until the 70s increased a lot faster.
Yeah.
Ever since then, Sweden's been going faster and faster, but yeah. We're not as bad, obviously, as Russia. You don't have Islamic no-go republics.
Yeah.
But you will have a problem from the fact that simply destroying the Overton window, if it is ever destroyed or if it just shifts to the right, will take maybe a year and a half more. And over the next few years, just with family members of those that arrived in 2015 and 16, you'll have 300 and I don't know how many thousand new arrivals. So the radicalizing enclaves in Sweden, they'll keep radicalizing.
Yeah.
So by the time that everyone begins to realize actually this is bullshit, let's be honest, let's be frank. Yes, we'll be frank, but the problem will require, in the words of Churchill, blood, sweat and tears. It'll be very, very hard to solve. It could have been solved in the 80s. It could theoretically have been solved in the 90s. It might have been solved in the first decade of the new century. Now, yes, it could be solved, but you have Salafist mosques all over the place. I don't think there's a single mosque in Sweden. I could be wrong though, but I don't think there's a single mosque in Sweden that hasn't had the controversy that they've invited anti-Semites, they've invited homophobes. Some congregation members have raised money for terrorist organizations. There was a scandal a few years ago that they went with a hidden camera posing as 2 Muslim women to 10 mosques in Sweden, saying, "Oh, my husband beats me, what should I do?" A majority said, "Don't do it, it is the will of Allah, you should tolerate being beaten, don't go to the police." This was a few years ago. It's gotten worse, with the newly opened Salafi mosque in Malmö. Al-Malmö. Yeah. So, is there any hope? Maybe, but things have to start to change soon. Because it hurts, you have a lot of the funny thing is, the most Islamophobic people I know are secular or atheist people of Muslim origin. Iranians, Iraqis, Kurds,
Syrians, yeah.
Yeah, they're all coming here. They're saying, look, this is a problem. This is a problem. It's one thing to think of it as, being proud of your culture, but this is a cultural phenomenon that is unacceptable, spreading in Sweden.
Yeah.
It's like when the biggest Islamophobes are people who have come from Islam, then that should give you food for thought. Because it does mean that there's a problem and it's beyond ethnic lines. So, I have fundamentally much more respect for Nalin Pekgul and Amina Kakabaveh, and these are left-wing women, but they point out the problem. And you have Hanna Sederin, pure Swedish left party member. She's like, oh no, there's no problem at all, stop being racist, like that. So it's not along ethnic lines. It will be a divide between culture, and again, my hairdresser is Iranian, and I think that if she were a Swede, they would call her a racist. They would say, go to the Sweden Democrats, you don't belong in any other party. Because she says like, oh, I don't like the veil, I don't like the mosques building up here, I don't like that. So it's going to be a cultural divide, and it's going to be, ironically, with the left being lovers of diversity, it's going to be a very diverse Occidental secular right wing. Because you're going to have people of Muslim origin, you're going to have East Europeans, then the winged hussars arrived, and you're going to have Swedes, and it's going to be a very, very diverse bunch. Then you're going to have the radicals of the newly arrived cultures on the other side, and you'll have the useful idiots of the Swedish culture. People who, they could get thrown off rooftops, and the last thought through their head, the people in pride parades with gays for Palestine, it's like people, the kind of people when they get thrown off rooftops, the last thing going through their head before the stone on the ground, before the pavement, is, I hope they don't think I'm a racist. Incorrigible people almost.
It is a topic that I approached with several people off the camera. That with some of those, it will have to be pretty much like in Eastern Europe. That is to say, you have to wait for them to just die off.
Well, that's true, but the problem is that there are many young people among in Sweden as well. All of these unga feminister, Vänsterpartiets ungdomsförbund, Grön ungdom, and so on and so forth. So it's not like the Ceaușists in Romania that fuck that, just wait a decade and they're gone. You either have to convert them and show them that they're wrong, which is hard because, in the words of Yuri Bezmenov, they're completely demoralized. Or you have to essentially just assume that, ideologically speaking, hopefully not in real terms, but ideologically they're the enemy. They will not see the light. They will not see the truth.
I'll have to move a little bit because it's been starting to rain. So give it back.
right, so we moved somewhere there where we might be safe from rain, at least for now. Yeah. So, where were we?
We were discussing about the battle lines to be drawn ideologically. And this is, I don't think it's too late for Sweden, but if things don't begin to change radically within the next 5-6 years, it could be. Because, I mean, it isn't really as hard fought as a battle as you might think. Because ultimately, thankfully, it is a matter of culture and not, mostly culture, not so much biology. Because, I mean, I have had the privilege of, well, some people might not call it a privilege, but I had my practical work experience in 8th grade working in a kindergarten in Rinkeby. Yes. Ghetto thug life.
That place, yeah.
Wild and crazy. No, but
No, now they call it wild and crazy.
yeah. No, but I mean, there were plenty of kids there that were, you know, sure they weren't what, you know, many among the alt-right would call Swedish. Duh, it's Rinkeby.
Yeah.
But they were very, very eager to learn, and they were very, very good kids. The problem is that if you grow up in what is essentially a no-go zone, no matter how much our journalists try to spin it otherwise by saying, oh no, but there are public stonings of women, so obviously it can't be a no-go zone.
Yeah, you don't have to get that far in order to be a no-go zone.
But if you grow up in an area like that, well, the chances of you falling in with a bad crowd are very, very high. So you drop out of school, maybe you don't even go to high school, and even if you don't consider that worthwhile, because you know there are many good jobs that don't require a great deal of education. But if you fall in with the wrong crowd, you don't even get any kind of practical work experience. So it's a waste of human potential. And the fundamental issue to be resolved is to enforce law and order. Because we were to know that thing in Kienstad, I was like, oh, we need more resources, more resources.
Yeah.
I think that even a lot of years ago, it was estimated that Rinkeby school receives like twice what an ordinary Swedish school receives. And it still produces atrocious results. So you can keep throwing money at it and just say that, oh, you know, we'll put some money into social outreach projects and so on and so forth, more money for the schools. But if you have drug dealers and car burners and all sorts of things around the corner, that's not really going to help.
Yeah, and not to mention that in one's teenage years, one would prefer to actually make some money, and you know, drug dealers can help you make a lot of money fast. Sure, that comes with the costs, such as wasting your social capital for the future, but good luck to teaching 14-year-olds about that. Good luck enforcing those consequences early on, so you can actually teach a lesson. I mean, that guy from who was the headmaster of Husby School, that one was a little bit more down to earth. I mean, at the very least, he was aware that competition actually makes things better and whatnot. I mean, at the very least, but even that guy who has already seen the degeneration of the area that he's serving, even that guy still cannot be able to come to grips with the fact that as long as you don't have law and order, it's really difficult to have pretty much anything else. So this is why I'm not that optimistic, because as long as you have these little schmucks running the education establishment and the media establishment, okay, let's say the ones in the media, they're easier to remove after all through competition and whatnot. But the ones in the education establishment, particularly government-funded education establishment, those aren't that easy to remove, aren't they?
No. That's a problem. It's a matter of, will the national awakening of Sweden happen in time? Because we've discussed, you know, how the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and maybe you have some trolls coming into the comment section squealing that Euromaidan was, you know, Ukrainian snipers or something. But the Russian invasion of Ukraine revitalized the Ukrainian national identity. Even Russian Ukrainians and Tatar Ukrainians see themselves as Ukrainian now because of a common enemy of diversity. I think that's what's beginning to happen to Swedes as well. That's why you see more and more immigrants voting Sweden Democrat. But the question is, because this is a step-by-step process, obviously because Swedes, in my opinion, have been more demoralized than the Ukrainians ever were, it'll take a longer time for them to wake up, to reach a point where they say enough is enough.
Yeah, because it just seems that there isn't enough awareness that this country is being invaded.
Well, I mean, it is being invaded in the essence that it's trying to essentially
Bury the head in the sand.
Yeah, I mean, it's trying to essentially just do mutually incompatible things. You know, like open borders and unrestricted immigration. There are many political parties in Sweden, particularly on the left, but also the Center Party, I believe, which is allegedly a libertarian party, but it's of course law-libertarian, and it's really more law than libertarian, if we're going to be honest. But they believe that this can be combined. And obviously this is a sad part. Most actual Swedish economists disagree. Assa Lindbeck, Tino Sanandaji, a bunch of others, even those among the libertarian crowd, they say that, look, it's a very big problem to combine these two things.
Yeah.
What does the Swedish government do? Well, it's not really officially the government, but this consensus culture complex essentially produces bullshit paper after bullshit paper from their think tanks trying to portray a rosy picture of the situation. They're saying, oh no, immigration brings 900 billion Swedish kronors to Sweden.
Yeah.
And Sandviken's commune has made so much money off immigration. And when the actual economists look at that, they realize that they're skewing the data, they're omitting costs, and they're over-exaggerating incomes. But this is what I guess you would call it cathedral media complex. It's basically them just bullshitting. And, as far as the Center Party goes, they're allegedly fans of Ayn Rand, but I don't know if they remember this quote by her. You can evade reality, but you can't evade the consequences of having evaded reality.
Yeah, and they're fans of Ayn Rand, but they don't remember the part where Atlas actually shrugs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in the title, but
I don't know, maybe they had somehow missed it.
Well, in all fairness, maybe they've just read the Swedish version. That's called Och världen skälvde and the world trembled.
Okay.
So maybe that's why.
Yeah, maybe that's why. But no, in all seriousness, there is this unwritten law in economics that if something is not sustainable and cannot go on, what?
Sweden won't. I mean, I think it'll be a combination of a demographic catastrophe, which we're moving towards, but it's also an economic catastrophe. Well, not a catastrophe really, maybe, hopefully not, but sufficient enough. Privately, we are among the most indebted peoples in the world. I think the Danish have us beat marginally.
Oh, actually, marginally more. The Danes are 220%, whereas the Swedes are 175. But still.
And if you look at the World
the
Bank...
The intermarium is at 39.
Yeah. If you look at the World Bank, which is obviously a hateful racist site, you shouldn't look at it, because it's probably run by Nazis or something. But the World Bank, more or less, as Sweden has had no actual real terms per capita growth since 2007. Even now, this spring our politicians are so happy. Oh, we have a growth rate of 2.2%. That's twice as much as the European Union average. And the economists from Svensk Näringsliv said, guys, our actual population growth has been way, way more than that.
Yeah.
So we're becoming poorer.
Yeah, it's basically negative growth. Yeah. Besides, 2.2% even in and of itself isn't really that spectacular. Poland had 3.7, Romania had 3.3. So in and of itself isn't really that spectacular. Not to mention that in real terms it's negative growth.
And also, it's also another fact that the official public debt is kind of constant and slightly decreasing. but the municipal debt is at 500 billion krona, and it's probably going to double in 8 years. And it might do even more than that, because right now the interest rates are very good. Some municipalities even get money for doing things. So it's like, oh, here, take money and spend it, and if you spend it, you get even more money. When that changes, it's going to be very, very painful for a lot of municipalities.
It's going to be the shit hit the fan scenario. One last thing, and then we can wrap this up and head towards the north of the city. Another thing that I've heard it as a recurring theme within the last several days since I've been here, is that you have a strong contingent of individuals who do understand these things, but nevertheless they want to think about them, and if you bring them up, they say, oh yeah, but I don't want to think about that. It's too depressing, it's too sad, I don't want to think about that.
I have met some people like that, but I think the great majority don't even wish to go as far as to accept that there is a problem. A lot of people will simply say, oh no, that's not true, oh no, I read it in Aftonbladet, everything is fine. So many are still in the denial phase. And the problem, of course, if they advance from the denial stage to the
Confronting.
Yeah, no, I mean, if they only advance to the stage where they say, well, it's too depressing to think about, that's lethargy. That's not actually acting against the development. And I think that the great problem, and is that, I make a lot of updates on Facebook. Obviously, in the actual literal sense of the word, I'm not a Nazi, I'm not a racist, but of course, this is Sweden. I've been called both. So the thing is, a lot of the law students to whom I have spoken have said that we agree with you, but we don't dare to say it. And I think that's a very big problem, because it's really a matter of the prisoner's dilemma, or some sort like that, because on the one hand, if you speak out, yes, on an individual basis, you might damage your prospects in the future, but, now it's starting to but on the other hand, you will maybe encourage others to start speaking out, and you will forge more connections, and you will essentially lay the foundations for resistance. Whereas if you do what is individually rational, but not collectively rational, and I don't really like collectivism, but there you go, then you will benefit yourself in the short term, and in the long term, you will be fine. That's
yeah, but in the long term, you will be fine. So
yeah, I mean, it's
not like all these lefties will be fine. I mean, many of them are quite young, or at the very least in their early 40s, late 30s. They'll still be around 20 years from now. And they won't be fine either.
No, but I mean, it's kind of a individual rationality versus collective rationality dilemma. Or rather, if I do this, it won't benefit me, but then again, not doing anything will benefit me either, but then at least we'll all be in trouble. I won't be the only one in trouble.
Yeah, but that's socialistic thinking. Yeah, let's all be equally poor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now you can see where that comes from in the consensus culture. It's the idea that, and I think this is going to be a problem, because it's a silent majority, and it is a majority, because 60% plus of Swedes at this point want less immigration, they want less refugees, but they never actually say it. So if the silent majority stays silent for much longer, I think that the silent majority will have doomed everybody. If they would have started from the very beginning, I mean, what are they going to do what would they do if 60% of Swedes said enough? Can you call every one of their employers and say, fire this person?
Yeah.
You're not going to do that. Yeah. Can you essentially say, all right, then leave Sweden? 60% of the population should leave Sweden because they have the wrong opinion? That's not going to happen. So the silent majority is essentially damaging the country. Yeah. A lot of people agree, and they're not racist for having, obviously, if you're a sane person, you will understand that they're not. Obviously, the great majority, the dog is trying to. Yeah. The great majority of Swedes voicing concerns obviously aren't racist, but I think that it's essentially that they're very, very frightened of being called that, and it's going to damage the country in the long term. So I don't really know what to say. I mean, I won't say that the battle is lost, but within 5 to 10 years, the demographic and the economic factors could turn against this country to such an extent that repairing the damage will be close to impossible.
Or at the very least, very expensive in all terms.
And I mean, this is what I think is so sad, because there are so many people, so many genuinely good people who really want to help, but they're frightened because they see the actual effect of what's going on. And they're called racists, they're called Nazis, they're called all sorts of things. It really does piss me off. That's why I feel that, I can't shut up. I don't care. It's a bit like, my dad's also a fan of Ayn Rand, and he only has himself to blame because I read The Fountainhead. And it's more or less precisely about this. The School of Architects, and everyone's like, oh, you're supposed to like this, you're supposed to be like this. And the protagonist says, I'll say whatever I want, I'll do whatever I want, and I don't care if it costs me very much. So every time my dad's like, oh, you have to shut up because you have too many political opinions, I say, Dad, what would Howard Rourke do? So it's not even what would Jesus do, it's what would Howard Rourke do. So,
I guess
I think that I've just rambled a lot of incoherent thoughts here.
Not a problem. What it will take is indeed to just go one by one. Social media helps a lot. The other day we were talking with Anneli. Basically, most of these things that have been going on in last several days would have never been possible without Facebook. Because this is what she was telling me what's more popular part. People won't click on the like button or share something on PC from a big slot of the either, but they would still speak amongst each other on the streets. And in the small towns such as Swedish, where Anneli lives, things maybe even change even faster. Indeed, I guess the last ones that will find out about it will be these uptight urbanites here in Stockholm and in Gothenburg and in the very few non-peaceful religion places in Albalbo that are still left. Those are the ones that will find out the last.
Yeah, I think that, and I will say that I think that the internet has essentially destroyed the Swedish opinion corridor, the Overton window, and I think that's probably what's going to help fundamentally. If there's any hope, it's in the internet. It's the fact that, 20 years ago, as you said, we wouldn't have met. I would have met all the people I met with Friday and on Saturday and many others. So it's an information revolution, and it's unstoppable. There is a reason why the Social Democrats oppose free television, private television in the 1980s, because they were worried, and very correctly, because whatever they might be, the Social Democrats, at least at the leading level, aren't stupid. Stefan Löfven isn't stupid.
Oh, no.
But it's just that
he's evil, but he's not stupid.
And the thing is, they knew that their iron grip on information would go away if they deregulate the information market.
Yeah, but they were afraid of deregulation of the television market, but they didn't foresee the internet,
which was even more.
Yeah, a whole different ballgame. And that one, at the very least, has stayed pretty much away from state regulation.
Yeah.
And it still is. I mean, the Germans are trying really, really hard to regulate social media and whatnot, with a degree of success that is not noticeable.
Yeah.
So I guess we have to the internet. I mean, at the end of the day, this video is on the internet.
Or it will be.
Well,
relatively speaking. From our point of view.
Yeah. But still, I mean, all of these things will eventually have to have an impact. Now, whether that impact will be big enough
to change the trend.
To change the trend, I don't know. Not to mention that, and this is something that we haven't spoken about at all, is the emigration. How many Swedes have left permanently left. I think it was in 2014 or 15 when Sweden had a net loss of population.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that a lot of people will, because you've already noticed this in the microcosm of things. You've noticed that, you know, that study I mentioned from Mittuniversitetet or Linnéuniversitetet, that whenever there is a percentage of population of more than 4% non-European immigrants, the Swedes and the European immigrants begin to leave. So we've seen that in the microcosm, we've seen that in Rinkeby, we've seen that in Tensta, we've seen that everywhere. That, you know, no matter how we are forced to say that we like this, we like mass immigration, we like all of this, but when we're put in a position where we vote with our feet and our wallets, the results tell a different story.
Yeah.
And I think that if Sweden goes down the drain, and I can't overemphasize this because, you know, a lot of the left-wing hatred manifests by them saying, why do you criticize Sweden so much? Do you hate it? The answer is actually the opposite. I mean, they tried this with Carl Bildt in 1990, the state television, back when, you know, they were actually a full commie, even more so today, and when the conservatives were actually conservatives. And Bildt said very, very plainly, the reason I criticize Sweden is because I think that Sweden deserves better. And this is the whole point. You know, I do criticize it a lot. I think a lot needs to change, but I'm doing it in the best interests of the country. And that is why it's particularly infuriating, not intimidating, but infuriating to be branded a racist or a Nazi or whatever. One, you don't fulfill the definition. And number two, you're saying what you're saying in the best interest of the country. Yes, you can say that Sweden is turning into a third world slum. But, I mean, it's like when I argue with Russophiles on the internet, say you hate Russia. You can say that Russia has 2% HIV, Russia has higher abortion rates than any comparable country, and so on and so forth.
Higher Islamization.
You hate Russia. Say, no, if I hated Russia, I would spread the Putinist propaganda that everything is fine and leave Russia to its own devices. So it's the same thing with Sweden. And I think that there will be a pushback. It's happening right now. The question is, will it be enough? And for better or worse, we'll live to find out.
Yeah.
All right. This train doesn't seem to be stopping, so I guess we'll have to get ready. Thank goodness I've taken this with me. We'll start to go through the water and take the train and travel a bit further to the north. We'll be back with some other updates for sure in due time. Cheers.